I think our colleagues said something very interesting to me. I guess this was yesterday evening. He said that, you know, this is a very interesting meeting because, with the exception of the presentation from the World Bank, there wasn't a lot of data and figures and structural models, and it was at a completely different level of analysis, which, you know, someone outside might think that's pretty superficial. They didn't really get into the detail. But as our colleague put it, he said, what we discuss not what is important, but what is essential. And I think that really is right. There are some really fundamental issues that aren't at the level of, you know, the number of people living in poverty or, you know, our theory of change necessarily. It's the issues that are linked to the passion and linked to the fundamental question about how we connect with people who are living in poverty. The third thing I wanted to say was that I've personally found this meeting a very useful opportunity to learn and think more about movements. That's something I really wanted to focus on, and so I chose the breakout sessions, you know, women's movements and the like, because I wanted to understand a bit more about movements and our role in movements. Because if you think about it, for every movement that started, probably 1,000 haven't succeeded. And some that have been pushing and pushing and pushing are unsuccessful, and then suddenly it happens. And, you know, Desmond Tutu, we keep saying this, that, you know, everything matters, that the inertia, you're sort of creating the building blocks, even if you fail, seem to fail in the short term. It's something, the next person climbs a bit higher, and then suddenly you reach the tipping point, and you're able to accomplish amazing things. And so I learned a lot about that. I won't get into the details, but I'd be happy to talk to anyone who'd like to discuss that with me. The final thing I wanted to say was something that worried me a bit. A number of people in the room mentioned anger. And actually, Stephen Lewis mentioned anger. And I just know from my own life, my own experience, that anger is a great way to build up adrenaline and to get people jumping and moving. And actually, after Stephen's speech, I felt like lifting up a flag and saying, let's go, you know. I really felt motivated to act. And it was a wonderful speech. But I think the energy and enthusiasm has to come from somewhere other than anger. And there were there are a whole variety of experiences in history, I think, that reinforce that, although many movements start as from anger. One is the judo analogy, because one sure way to be a bad judo wrestler is to get angry. It doesn't work that way. The second was the comment about pain. Pain, pain, pain. Poor people feel pain, but they choose to smile. That strikes me as a much more powerful foundation for change.
Thanks, Robert. And you know, I've heard some questions today, and I want to return to them. Perhaps in the last session and earlier on today, clearly people beginning to think about, so what does this actually mean for us? How are we going to be in the future? What's going to be different? And we've also been reminded by several of the speakers that don't start your future from where you are. Think out there, imagine what it's going to be, how it's going to be, what you're trying to create. And I'd like to ask both of you maybe to just go a little bit further with your reflections and tell us how you think you at the moment are seeing care to be in, who knows, 5 years' time. And not so much what will we be doing, but how will we be acting? How will we be behaving? How will we be? Helene?
One thing, I'll answer that question in a second. I just, back on the last thing, as I was looking out of the audience, one other comment I had wanted to make that I thought was incredible, and I just want to give particular thanks to all the board members of CI, because it's really incredible. I know people actually changed reservations to stay because they came for a board meeting and weren't necessarily all going to be part of the global conference, but I think as people have been part of it, they have stayed longer and longer. We've got new board members as well as old board members. And I think sometimes the board members are kind of invisible part of CI and the different care organizations. And you're people who give up your time, your own resources to come and be involved. So I just wanted to recognize that, because I think it shows incredible commitment that all of you are here. And I would just also echo that for the partners who are here, because we've had some incredible partners who have been here, who have stayed beyond their particular presentations, who have gotten ideas as a result of being here, who are thinking about working with us in different ways. So, again, I think equally want to thank the partners who aren't part of CARE, but who have stayed and who, have learned with us and brought so much to this. So I just, wanted to acknowledge them as well. So for the question, I guess I think it really does, as we think about what it means for us as an organization, I think there are a few things. First of all, this notion of how do we become judo players, and how do we really take what we do and leverage that. And I think Stephen Lewis again said it in his speech the first day, that CARE is primarily known by most people as an organization that has excellent field programs. And I think we really have focused on what we do to make a direct impact on the lives of people. And I think we should. And I think that is our strongest base, being able to have programs that we know that are tangible, that make a difference in people's lives, for a couple of reasons. One, because when you enter into a community, even though we may know that the underlying causes of poverty are discrimination, exclusion, poor governance, et cetera, you don't go into a community that's hungry and say, would you like some good governance? They want food. So, food, water, education is a lever to work with communities and to build from there to look at underlying causes of poverty. But I think we've got to think about how we do that in a way that remembers that the services and the programs that we do, in fact, are levers to continue to go deeper and deeper in our work that really tackles some of the underlying causes of poverty. I think the second reason is that being able to change policies, being able to speak to some of the broader issues, both at the country level as well as globally, is done better, and several people said this, if we have a base from which to speak from. And we know, I know very strong advocacy organizations who often don't have the credibility that we bring when we come to the table because they don't have the field base. So I think one is thinking as equally about our excellence in using our programs both as a lever at the community level, but also as a way of shifting the dial more broadly than what our programs can do. And I think it means that we have to put as much focus on developing those skills, advocacy, building constituencies, like John Manley said, that are so important to be able to have policymakers listen to the issues that we talk about. So I think, I think that is key.